was September in 1999, and I was the new principal assigned to a small school in an urban setting in a big city. This small school had 4 stories, first through 4th stories, and an elevator that ran down the middle, lucky for us. And I was invited to come and see a classroom and a teacher in action. I was anxious to see what was going to happen. She was going to give a lesson to the children and then set them off on a big project. And this particular teacher's classroom was on the 1st floor, and there was another classroom on the 1st floor. They both worked together off and on, and the 2 of them had a lot of tension between each other. I had heard that there were tensions going on over the years. I had also noticed as I came into the school that in general there were people around the school that weren't getting along. So that was something I was interested in learning more about. Well, I came into the classroom and I sat down in the back and was excited to see what would happen. And what really happened was this teacher began to present a lesson, but she was very emotional. It almost looked like she was going to cry, and she was clearly stressed. What I noticed next is that there was a ripple effect with the children, and they were becoming stressed and actually kind of out of sync. And so there was clearly something going on, and I was anxious to get to the bottom of it. So at the end, when the class was dismissed, I caught her in the hallway and I said, you know, come on in to my office tomorrow morning and let's talk about how it went yesterday. And so she did. She came into my office and sat down, and I said, well, you seemed very stressed yesterday. What do you think was going on with you? And she started to talk, and then she stopped, and then she started to cry. And she really just melted down before my eyes. And I said, well, what do you think is going on here? And she said, well, I'm not getting along with this other teacher, and what happened yesterday just was the tipping point. It sent me off over the edge. And so she explained what happened. Apparently, they had both gotten onto the elevator on the 2nd floor together, and she had pressed 1st floor, and the other teacher had pressed 4th floor. Well, the other teacher turned to her and said, oh, I'm on my way up, and you are on your way down. And so that was the tipping point of tensions between them. And she had never really gone to the teacher and shared with her, you know, what was bothering her over all these months. So I asked myself 2 questions. What was going on with this? And also, how was I going to fix it? So that's an interesting question. I bring those answers today to you because we're going to go on a journey of talking about some of the solutions. So our work in education is to so-called prepare children for the 21st century. We're already in it. And actually, what we should be doing is preparing children to transform the 21st century. Thank you. And how can we transform the 21st century when we haven't transformed ourselves in the workplace? Actually, in schools, it's extremely important that we, as the adults in the school, are the role model for the children. Well, the next thing that happened that fall was that I received an amazing invitation. And this invitation was for all the principals in this city to come together to study about the work of Dr. Murray Bowen. Dr. Murray Bowen was a psychiatrist in the 50s who made an enormous discovery that discovery was that if you work with a family system rather than just a particular person who is ill, especially mentally ill, that interestingly, the person got better. So there was this understanding with Murray Bowen that we are all as human beings deeply, deeply interconnected. And I think we're starting to all know this in the world. But what was notable about this was that we have this phenomena in our families, but also a school is a larger family system. There really anywhere that we're working in a workplace, we have a family system that is about us as adults. So what is interesting about this discovery is that there is an emotional force field that runs through all the humans in the family system. There's a force field. Do you remember the Star Wars, The Force Be With You? Yeah. So that force field is an emotional field that runs through all of us together. Actually, Murray Bowen told the story of the cows, because humans are mammals. This is in all of us. The cows, where the one cow goes up to the edge of the fence and gets electric shock. Well, within less than a second, the whole herd is anxious and stressed. Well, guess what? The same thing happens to us. And in a school, I think most of you that are running a school, if you're a school principal, know the phenomena of a parent in the parking lot, and they have a group of parents surrounding them. I see some heads nodding. And you know, it doesn't take very long before that whole group of parents is upset, just like the person who is upset in the beginning. And that runs through the whole school. So this understanding of an emotional force field was what was so interesting about our family system of our school. So I really found that as an outstanding discovery. Then Murray Bowen went on to say that, well, when we're stressed as an emotional field, then we try to get relief. So all of us as humans try to get relief in this situation. And what's interesting about that is that we try to get the relief, but it actually doesn't relieve the whole family system. It actually makes it worse. So that way that we relieve things is by creating a triangle. And really all of us do this. And so what is that triangle? The triangle is when we have an issue with someone, just like that teacher, we don't go to the person we have the issue with. That takes a lot of courage. Instead, we go to a friend and we complain. You know, basically we kind of complain behind the person's back that we have the issue with. And that is a triangle. And that triangle holds stress within the family system. So it really doesn't solve anything. So part of that solution is learning to develop the courage to go directly to people that we have an issue with, to talk it out. So that was a whole interesting learning for me about what was happening in this school. There are studies now being done about the fact that the stress among teachers impacts the stress and the lower performance of children. So we have a huge responsibility as adults in our workplace of the school to not be doing that. There's preliminary studies going on in British Columbia and also in the US. And it's going to be interesting to see how that evidence comes out in the end, but it's really showing that there is this direct correlation. So basically, there's a lot going on that we've got to remedy among ourselves as adults. How many of you in your own workplaces, wherever they are, have not had the courage to go directly to a person that you have an issue with? Are there any of you here? Yeah, thank you. One person raised their hand. Well, I was at the airport coming here from the US, and I got there early, and I was at the gate, and an airline manager was on the phone, and he says to somebody on the phone, "No, you tell her." "No, I'm not going to tell her. You tell her." "You know what? Get Sharon to tell her because she's got real guts." So, it's really everywhere in us. So there's another piece to this, and that is that if we are to prepare children to transform the 21st century, they need to be creative, because we are in the most complex time on earth. And to be creative, you can't be in a reactive mode. And we all know that reactivity shuts down the brain, and we can't be creative. And so this whole dynamic that goes on it's just so important that we play our role in the most optimum way in getting along with each other. So the whole proposition for me was transforming ourselves to allow the children to go on and transform our world. And I have one suggestion that I want to make in terms of solutions. There's many solutions as to how to do this, but this is really an outstanding how-to. And it comes from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. If you've heard of Yale University on the East Coast of the US, they have formed a whole center for emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, you can remember through the acronym RULER, ruler, and it means recognize our emotions, understand our emotions, label our emotions, express our emotions, and regulate our emotions. And it's the regulating emotions that we have a hard time with. So they offer a wonderful tool, and that tool is called a charter. It's something that you co-create together as a team, as a staff, and then you make a commitment to it. It's sort of like a constitution. And so that charter we did in my school, and we formed the charter by filling out 3 parts. And those 3 parts were, how do I want to feel when I come to work at the school each day? How do I want to feel? And how I want to feel is, well, people said, appreciated, heard, recognized. And then the next question is, well, if we want to feel this new way in our school, how do we implement this? What are the practical ways that we would implement this? And so then that's co-created. And the last part that's co-created is when there is conflict, and there is inevitable conflict among every place that we work, how do we solve it? How do we work together to dissolve this conflict? So you do that all together, and you fill it out, and you sign it, and you essentially make a vow to each other. You make a commitment to each other that this is the new way that we will be together as we work. And so I find that to be a wonderful solution to the how-to of deciding as grown-ups, as adults, how we are going to work together. I wanted to leave you with a wonderful quote from Lawrence van der Post, who was from Great Britain. And when he was freed after World War II from a prisoner camp, he gave the world this message, and this is the message. It always comes back to this. We cannot take the life of our times further than we have taken ourselves. So that is our challenge. And I hope that we all embrace that challenge as the adults in the world for our children. Thank you.